Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Marquisha Hall podcast. I have a special guest here with us today. I have Kayla Schrock, and she is an 8th grade inclusion RSP teacher. She's been in education for 13 years, and she is the giver of Chicago popcorn, which we love.
Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it.
Thank you for taking your time out. We were actually just an hour in already talking about special education. I brought her on because she loves special education, and so do I. So we're going to talk about initial IEPs for our new parents that are new to IEPs, and a little bit of what they can expect when they're going into their first IEP.
So the first time when you walk in as a parent, you're probably going to be so overwhelmed and not knowing what to expect. One of the things that I personally do at my IEPs is greet you guys, the front office, make sure you guys feel welcome and comfortable. Obviously, we would have had communication prior to in scheduling the IEP, making sure that all the IEP team members are going to be able to be present at the IEP meeting. And then when we bring you into the room, we'll sit you down at a table and then introductions will be made. Since we're talking about an initial IEP, as a parent, you should expect that the special education teacher will be there. There's an administrator at the IEP meeting, a general ed teacher, whether that is a content area or whether that's the physical education teacher. There should be some type of general ed teacher there. You should also have a school psychologist there because at an initial IEP meeting, the school psychologist is going to be doing the overall assessments for your students to make sure that they qualify for special education. And then any other service provider. So, if your student gets assessed for occupational therapy, which is called OT, or speech and language services, which is called an SLP. If those people did do an assessment, they should also be present at the IEP meeting as well.
That seems like a lot of people, Kayla.
It can be. But it is just so important to make sure that if your child gets assessed, that those people that gave your student an assessment are present at this IEP meeting, and that they're going to be introduced to you, so you know who they are. So when they go to speak at the IEP meeting, you're going to know exactly what they're going to be talking about. And then while they're going through their evaluation of your student, that you make sure that you understand what they're saying, because evaluations can be so overwhelming. I know for me as a teacher, I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. Can we take a step back? Mom, Dad, do you guys understand what they're saying right now? And usually the school psychologist and the speech language pathologist and the OT person, they're usually really good at checking back in. But also, parent, if it gets too overwhelming for you and you're not understanding something that they're discussing with you, that you make sure you get the clarification you need.
Right. So just a little segue. So how would a parent, because I feel like there's all the people that are there, and I like the way that you clarified that everyone's not there. Everyone's there as a team. And I like that you said that they're there not so they can be like, we're the team and you're the parent. They're there to explain their part in the evaluation process. I like that you said that because that makes it seem less, everyone gets to talk about their own reports so that they're in their area.
As an IEP team, we're there with one focus, and that's the kid. That's the child, and what's going to be the best for that child educationally. And, the parent input is so much of an important piece, and it's a vital component to that. So just making sure that that's the main focus and the priority at any IEP meeting, especially the initial. It's just really important to know who everybody is and to make sure that they stop, freeze, ask for questions, because it can be very overwhelming.
Yes, definitely can. And another thing that parents can do is they are welcome to bring their own support person to the meeting, correct?
Absolutely. I know at my IEP meetings, after introductions are made, I do like to address parent concerns. After introductions are made, the parent concerns can come at different times when an IEP meeting starts. But for me personally, I always like to address parent concerns. Usually parent concerns can be really overwhelming and kind of intimidating for a parent to state at an IEP meeting. So I understand the need for a parent to want extra support there. But parent concerns, they should be addressed. And when parents' concerns are spoken at the beginning of the IEP, the special education teacher and the IEP team can make sure that they are addressed throughout the IEP process. And I love doing the parent concerns first because I already know in my head, oh, yep, I got to address that. I was already going to say something about that. You know, it just gives us a little bit of a guidance to make sure, like, we're making sure that your needs as the parents are understood and that you guys are being heard.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That is a super important part of the IEP. Like, one of the most important parts is to get the parent concern in there. So what's next after that?
So after parent concerns, I like to go to the heart and the soul of the IEP, which is the present levels. The present levels is everything about your child. It could be done through assessments given within the classroom. It could be through observations noted, you know, by the general ed teacher or from the parent at home, observations of the school psychologist when they have gone in through their evaluation process. But your parent input is also really important in the present levels, because when you come into the IEP meeting, that IEP document is a live document, which means that everybody's input during this meeting is going to be added into it. So we already have present levels listed in there. Obviously, appropriate documentation can be given. So if you're not understanding an assessment that was given, whether it's the special ed teacher that gave it, whether it's the school psychologist that gave it, or the speech pathologist that gave it, we can show you what that looks like. We can explain it into further detail if you're not understanding. Like, there's just certain words that I can assume as a parent I would feel really overwhelmed with, like, what is cognitive functioning? I don't understand. What is audio visual processing? But making sure to ask what that means, because as a parent, you're going to be the one that works with your student at home. So you understanding what that need is also really important too.
Absolutely. And I know that for myself, and when I was a teacher, actually, that part is sometimes very difficult because, because it's saying all of my kids' deficits. So sometimes that's super hard to hear. And it's super hard to hear that part, because that's where there
needs to be a balance too, because part of that present levels is also focusing on what the student can do. Because when you focus on what they can do, that's going to help lead into the goals. What is going to be the goal for the year in reading, in writing, in mathematics? Where are they at right now? What's the positive things that they can do? You know, my student is able to use their finger to follow along while they're reading a book. My student, 8th grade teacher talking, is able to use positive and negative numbers without a calculator. Like, they are able to compute those things. You have to focus on what the student is doing, which is positive, and then learn how to grow from there. But then also, I'm going to throw in some more stuff for you guys. After those, within those present levels that are going to lead into those goals, you're also going to say, okay, well, you know, my student is going to work towards this goal, but what steps, what accommodations or modifications are going to be needed in order to help my student, you know, my child, reach that goal by the end of this, by the next annual IEP.
Right. I love the accommodations and modifications. It's something that I wasn't always utilizing when I first started doing IEPs as a teacher, but that's really a part that I like because it helps them just assess the learning environment in different ways. It's not just, it could be like sitting, right?
Right. And there's so many things, like I know me personally, especially in inclusion, that even my general ed teachers that I co-teach with, like there's accommodations and modifications that we do every single day that I put into the IEP because guess what? It helps the students.
Right.
It could be as simple as having the student rephrase the information given. So if I say, I'm going to throw Josiah, I'm going to need you to go ahead and take out your book and give him a minute. And then I go, Josiah, what did I ask you to do? He's going to say, you asked me to take out my book. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and get that out. But it's a simple accommodation, Right. And modification could be, a shortened assignment. When you get, general ed teacher or general ed students in the classroom, 10 assignments, that kid, he's good with 5. Let's build small things. So it's also understanding the difference between accommodations to help support them, but modifications mean that they're getting a different type of content presented to them.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good stuff there. Then we have accommodations and modifications. And then the next part
is the big kahuna one. Part of the initial IEP, obviously it will be determined whether your child is going to qualify for special education services or not. Based on
what? They don't, wait a minute.
They don't automatically be given, it has to be based off of the assessments. It has to be based off the observations and everything given. More than likely, if an initial IEP is requested and assessments given, more than likely the child will be given or be found eligible for special education services. But there are times when the student is not found eligible, and usually those students will then be moved into the 504 plan, which still allows them accommodations and modifications within the classroom. It's just not through an IEP.
Right. Yeah, but I think that clarification is important because the initial IEP is going to determine if they qualify for special education, because they can't have a medical diagnosis of, say, autism. But if it's not affecting them educationally, then they might not qualify if that doesn't show on through the assessments that was given at that time.
Absolutely. And those assessments could look at, obviously, first and foremost, academics, behavior, maybe sensory issues. I mean, whatever that might be, that would qualify them. So really important, but there's still options. That 504 plan is another option if they don't qualify. So say that the child does qualify and they are eligible for special ed, then the IEP team is going to meet. Parent, you are part of the IEP team, so your voice is so important. Yes. But you also have to understand the options that your student has. And there's such a variety of options within special ed that you need to know all of these options. My child could be placed in this program or this program, and I'm opening a whole can of worms right now. There is just, what did you call it when we talked about it before? Like the continuum of placement, and just understanding the options that your child has and being able to, as a parent, saying, you know what? No, I know they're capable of being in a program like that.
Right. Yep. So those, just for our parents out there, there's a continuum of placement. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your child is going to go to, say, what I want to say. I don't want to say mainstream. Mainstream could be something that is in their thing, or it could be a self-contained classroom. Sorry, I'm having a brain freeze.
I was up in there, but I was like, she's going to get it.
I'm going to get it out. It could be a self-contained classroom. So just because they have an IEP doesn't mean that they go to one place. It's a determination with the team at the IEP. It's determined at the IEP. So I want them to know that it's not just one place.
Yeah, and it's actually something I know as an inclusion teacher that I speak about. And it's also in the IEP, service options discussed.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you have your general ed settings, which doesn't just include PE.
Right.
Electives, it's music, it's computer time, like elementary school, speaking of. Coming from the middle school world, I know that we have, the mod severe special day class. We have a mild moderate special day class. We have an inclusion program that allows those mild moderate special day class students to be able to be mainstreamed and go into one special class all day. But we also have RSP, which means the student might struggle in English and they don't in math, or vice versa. So there's only one area that student might need help with. So understanding those options, but still making sure that your student is going to be included, because the social, emotional, that behavioral piece is so important. And you can't take that opportunity away from the student. You have to allow them the ability to be flexible within these, but understanding those options is huge. And so parents, that's called least restrictive environment, where your student is going to be able to be the most successful, but not be completely self-contained if they don't have to be. They need to be able to be given those options.
Yes. So we went to least restrictive LER. And what's next?
After, let's see, I have my little list. Sorry,
that's okay.
Notes. So definitely present levels, obviously, just to recap, parent concerns, which leads into present levels, which we discussed, and then goals, modifications, accommodations, the least restrictive environment, and then it's going to come down to the signature page. I usually do a review of the IEP because I take notes during the IEPs to make sure that after the IEP is done, I type all the notes of what happened. And it's just a very brief, short, sweet, straight to the point type of summary of what occurred during the IEP, who presented what goals were given, what decisions were made, and then comments, and then the signature page. So you'll definitely sign as a parent that you were a participant at the IEP meeting. After that, you check one of two boxes. One of them is, I guess there's 5 boxes that you can actually check. I go through each one for the parents. The first one is that you consent to the IEP, which means that you are 100% in agreement with it. The second box that you would check is, I consent with the exception of. So if you agree with the majority of the IEP, but you still need a discussion on this, you would check that box, and then you would hand write in, what the exception would be that you are not in agreement with. The other 3, especially in the initial, one of them is that your child is not eligible for special ed, and that you understand that. I think another one is that is no longer eligible, because there are students who eventually don't need an IEP anymore because they've made adequate progress and it's no longer needed. So that is another thing that you can check off for.
I was going to say, I was going to talk about what I did in my last IEP. I was going to talk about, I just lost it.
I'm like reading your mind, but I'm like taking everything.
I can't read my mind.
And then I make you lose your track.
Because I'm like this, like, I don't know. Hey, I want to know about, we talked a little bit about the maybe parents feeling intimidated because there's so many professionals at the table, and then they're just like them and maybe whomever they may bring for support, a friend or a neighbor. And we were talking earlier as a teacher that you feel the same way. I kind of talked about that in one of my podcasts, that as a teacher, I was like, I just want to.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm selfish about my babies. And I tell my parents this all the time. Like, I'm responsible for your baby. Like, they are my children. And going into an IEP meeting for myself personally, like, I want to do right by them.
Right.
And I not only want to do right by them, but I also want to make you as the parent feel comfortable and entrust me with your child that I'm doing what I have to do to make sure that your student gets to where they need to be. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I know.
And for me, it comes from just wanting to make sure that the parent understands, like, I hear you, I see you,
mm-hmm.
I love working with your child, and I want to do right by them. And so that's why IEP meetings are intimidating for me personally.
Right.
But I mean, I guess it just comes all around. I mean, I've been doing IEP meetings for 13 years, and I still kind of get those butterflies sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I have to take a deep breath. I think that's really important too. When you get to that point where you're feeling a little overwhelmed, just stop.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
Yep.
Where sometimes I'm like, okay, let's recap a little bit. So I know you were concerned with this, and we discussed this. Kind of going over a recap to maybe recollect your thoughts and your process through the IEP. It's just kind of a good way to have that deep breath. And that parent, if you need a 5-minute recess, you need that 5-minute break, you have the right to say, like, is it okay if we take a 5-minute break? I just need to use the restroom, or, I just need to step outside real quick. Like, I know that it can be really overwhelming. And I hope that, at your IEP meetings, that the positive things are also spoken, because when all you hear is negative, I personally, as a parent, I would be overwhelmed and feel so frustrated. Like, you're telling me all these things, but he can do this.
Right.
He can write. Mm-hmm. He can read. He can use a calculator. So how can we build where he's at and be able to step forward with that? So if you do need to take that time during a meeting because you are feeling overwhelmed with emotions or frustration, take that 5 minutes. Take that minute.
Emotional just thinking about it. I know. We're about to cry over here. And I know because I've done the assessments, and so. But when I got Josiah's, when he transitioned, I don't know what's wrong with my words today, but when he transitioned, we had to have to kinder. We did his triannual early. I cried, and I just wasn't expecting to, because I know what it looked like. Because, as a teacher here, with him having 2 teachers, we're like, got the assessments, and we're like, okay, this is what it's gonna be. He's probably gonna get this. We both do IEPs. We're both in special education, so we're like, I thought I was gonna be okay, and I wasn't. My friend was with me, and we took a moment, and then I collected myself and came back. And I just want parents to know that it is emotional, and for any teachers that might be listening out there on the other side, since I'm on both sides, that it's a lot to listen to. Those like far below, and some of them he couldn't score on. When I'm seeing my happy snaggletooth baby, shooting shots with their baby, so to take that into consideration, for the teachers and the staff to take that into consideration. And then for the parents to know that it is okay. That is your baby. It is okay to feel like that. And to let the team know that, hey, can I just take a minute to, I just need to take a minute. I think allowing, you just kind of sit there and think that this is the way the meeting's supposed to go. We do have an agenda. But for letting the parents know that, it is okay to take those breaks. It is okay to say, excuse me, I didn't understand that. Or write it down so that you can get it, get those things out later.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's like, again, during my IEP meetings, I am constantly checking in with parents, because I don't want my parents to leave and not understand something. Right. I don't want my parents to leave and feel so overwhelmed. Because I throw out jargon. I mean, we're special ed. I don't want to say specific learning disability, so I say SLD, but I make sure that the parent understands what that means. I don't want to just throw out all these big terms and then have you not understand.
Right.
But taking those moments to maybe recap during the IEP, or just taking a 5-minute break, if it is getting to that point and everybody's just kind of like, oh man, okay, we still have a lot to go over. Let's go ahead and take this time. Let's everybody kind of regroup. It's kind of just about knowing who's at the IEP meeting and understanding things. And parent, you're the number one person besides your students.
Right.
You know them the best.
Yep.
And you are your child's biggest advocate. Right. And to go into IEP meetings and feel like you're a part of them and that your voice matters, it's huge. And it's so important. And I think the more questions you ask for understanding or for clarification, the more involved that IEP team become. I do anywhere from 20 to 30 IEPs within a school year, and it can, it's a lot, I know, but I have kids that come and go. My caseload shifts from here to there. As an 8th grade teacher, I also do transitional. So you're looking double with my caseload. But that's why it's so important, because we as teachers, we do this all day, every day, not every day, but we do it. And it's part of our function. And when you don't understand something, we need to know, because we can't necessarily read your brain, right? We can't read your mind. So you asking questions is so important. And that's just even in an initial. Okay, well, what does this mean? Because that's going to mean the next IEP is going to be so much more informative and so much more exciting. And you're going to be so much more involved in it. I love IEPs. I love them. I love holding them. I love being
That's why I brought you on.
in action with parents, because I want to empower you, and I know that all IEPs are different. I know all special ed teachers run them a little bit differently. That's why I always say, at my IEPs, I did say, you can expect this. This will be taught, or this will be spoken, not taught. Sorry, teacher jargon over here. But just making sure that you understand is going to help you help your student at home, because homework will be given at some point. You're going to be working on your own individual skills at home with them, and making sure that that connection between school and home is on point. Because if the teacher's working on something, then parent, you got to make sure you do the same thing. Or parent, you can say, you know what, I did try that with Josiah and it wasn't working. How do you do that? Because I want to be able to help him build those skills. And if it's working for you, what key components of that did you do in order for him to be compliant with it? Like help me help him, or vice versa. The teacher's like, this wasn't working. And then the parent's like, yes, that was working at home. Okay, well, maybe it was the area or his comfortability of being at home. You guys are working together. You're not against each other. You're working together.
Definitely. It's definitely important to build those relationships with the staff. And I think that, like we were talking before, that it doesn't have to be adversarial. I think IEPs have a rep out there. And I really appreciate you coming on, because you are passionate about it, and that there are just getting your insight on the other side, saying like, well, we throw around the teacher jargon. I happen to be a special ed teacher, and I still do that when I'm talking to my podcast and I'm talking to people, and that is not intentional. That is just like teacherese. And
I even explain my day to my friends or my family, and I'm like, I had an IEP, and then this happened, and then this SDC and inclusion, and they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, special ed talk. Let me go ahead and break that down for you. Like, it's continually happening.
So it's not to get over on the parents and be like, oh, you don't know what you don't know what we're talking about. It's just how we're naturally used to talking, since that's what you do, that you're there 400 hours a day. So that it's important that the parents can to ask the questions. Not that you can, but you should kind of like, I think of it like someone taught me when I was interviewing a long time ago to ask, think of 3 questions that you're going to ask regardless of what happens, because then they kind of remember you and stuff. But in the IEP, not so they remember you, but so you can already have those questions kind of in your head. Like, what does this look like at home? Or can you explain this goal? Like, think of 3 questions that you can ask so that there can start to be that rapport.
Absolutely.
Between the school, because you guys are going to be together. I told my IEP team, Joe's in kindergarten. He goes to that school till 8th. It's a K through 8. We're going to be together. So let's talk about it. And speaking of adversarial, things don't always have to, we don't have, just because people don't agree, right? Just because the team might not agree on something doesn't mean that it has to be escalated or adversarial. It can still be something that's discussed and with data and backed up with data to if the parents have a concern that they're not happy with, then I encourage the parents to take some data to say, like, this is what I'm seeing in this spot and how can we help? Just going to say, like, I don't like this isn't helpful to the child or the team, because we need to be more specific on what we're doing.
I think it's important too, like, in bringing those questions in, not only as a teacher, but as a parent, that things at home are different than they are in the classroom. Mm-hmm. For the majority of the time. I mean, certain behaviors can be seen in both ways as well, but also coming in just as a parent with the understanding is that sometimes it is different in school rather than at home, but it's in, again, connecting for the purpose of your child. Right. That makes it so empowerful for your student when you guys are able to connect for the purpose of your child. So again, having those questions, but also that understanding. And, my personality might be a little bit different than yours, and that's okay. Right. It's working, or this isn't working, and being able to have those discussions, if you're able to, with your child, or different ways that they do communicate to say, how are you feeling? How was school today? And then if you know that your child's struggling or they're feeling overwhelmed with certain things, to be able to voice what you hear as a parent at home that I might not hear as a teacher at school.
Right. And that's good, because it is two different settings. And I know our goal, like, we would like them to be generalized. So asking the teacher, like, what would that look like at home? Maybe with the younger kids, I know that's easier because some of our goals are smaller. Excuse me, not smaller, but they're not as academically based. I taught only preschool. So just saying, like, well, can you give me an example of what that might look like at home? Because they might be using, like, measuring cups. I'm not that good with math, but they're like, oh yeah, we were cooking the other day. He's able to do those things. And that might looks different at home. And they might be meeting that goal and it looks different at home. So asking the teacher, like, well, what does this look like? What might this look like in the real world? Or when I'm helping them with their homework at home, what does that look like at home, so that they can see those connections between the goals, so that they're hopefully generalized.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to keep talking. So we will have another one soon, I hope.
We will. Thank you. Thank you so much. We will have Kayla back. We'll get those links to where she gets that popcorn. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again for taking your time to listen to the Marquisha Hall podcast. And if you would love to partner for your child's IEP, go ahead and schedule an IEP consult. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.